If you've been following the Green Lantern Rebirth storyline since we first started covering it, then you know what's going on, but if you don't, let me give you a quick rundown. Hal Jordan finally went face to face against Sinestro, finally defeating him, allowing the Green Lanterns to come back to this universe and take their rightful place as the protectors of the universe. Then a few other incidents happened, but during that time the Green Lanterns and the Yellow Lanterns, they teamed up, and they became a force to be reckoned with together. But now we have to see the aftermath of the Krona Gauntlet that Hal Jordan was using during his time as the Renegade. So, what happened when he buried it off all by itself? Could it have just been left alone? No, because then we wouldn't have this amazing story. I hope you guys enjoy. In our last video, John Stewart successfully united the Green and Yellow Lantern Corps after Guy Gardner threw down with Arkillo in an all-out street fight. With the return of the last Blue Lantern of Hope, Saint Walker, the White Lantern, Kyle Rayner attempted to bring back the fallen Lanterns of Blue. He wanted to bring them back to life as he did with Hal. But in the process, Saint Walker saw someone interfering with Kyle's work, resulting in him losing the White Lantern ring and once again becoming a Green Lantern. Since the unity of the Green and Yellow Lanterns, John has ordered that one member of each will be paired together, making them partners for each sector. Over in Sector 563, Goran's son and the Space Ape make their rounds, though both are still not happy with the merger. As they begin to bicker about Space Ape's actual name, the Green Lantern ring alerts to a temporal anomaly detected on an unnamed planet. Goran's son updates the patrol log, stating that they will go check it out, but as the two reach the planet, the ring indicates that the anomaly is no longer detected. Before leaving, Space Ape notices something off in the distance, and as they get closer, they see green veins spreading along the surface. Goran's son projects a microscope, and as he looks at it, he says that this isn't a mineral. It's ultra-dense willpower. Before long, Space Ape senses something coming, and the entire area is covered in green crystal monsters. Goran shouts to Space Ape to get out of here while he covers him, but Space Ape tells him that he will cover him! As the two fight, the creatures overwhelm the two of them, and all that can be heard are the screams of two lanterns. Meanwhile, over in Space Sector 0 on the sentient planet Amogo, the Yellow Lanterns begin to work on putting together a yellow power battery. As the Yellow Lanterns work though, one calls out to the group of Green Lanterns asking if they're getting an eyeful just standing there. As tension begins to build between the two groups, Kilowog tells everyone to just break it up and get back to work. As he says that, the Yellow Lantern, Raynon, grows in size and punches down on Kilowog. A fight breaks out between the two groups, and within seconds, John, Hal, and Kyle all fly down to break up the fights. However, as they try, no one listens and the fighting continues until a loud commanding voice tells them all, "Knock it off!" Everyone looks up to see Guy and Arkillo still recovering from their own fight, and Guy asks, "What the hell's is going on here?" Raynon says that it was the Green Lanterns, and Kilowog shouts, "No, it was the Yellows." And Guy stops them both, stating, "I can't believe that I'm being the adult here. Everyone just needs to stop. Me and Arkillo went at it, so that you don't have to, since we were gentlemen like that. So if I see another Green being a fool, you're gonna take it up with me personally." Arkillo tells the Yellow Lanterns that he'll be issuing the same warning. Lord Sinestro's time has passed. We now follow his daughter, Sornik. Soon all of the Lanterns begin to shake hands, and even Kilowog and Raynon comment on each other's hits. Later inside the Citadel Command Center, Salek attempts to reach out to Goran's son and Space Ape for a status report. As Salek tries to call it a few times, John then asks what's going on, but they're still getting no responses. Hal looks at the ring's last known location, and he looks at the unnamed planet and he says, "Actually, I know that place." John's ring alerts that there's another temporal anomaly, and then Salek gets a lock and he says that it's coming from the command center? Everyone turns back to see an explosion of light and a man walking through a portal. John shouts for the man to state his purpose, and as the man struggles to get up, he says that his name is Rip Hunter. The Green Lanterns have been erased from the future. John tells Salek to contact Sornik and tell her that it's a medical emergency, then check the databases for any mention of a Rip Hunter. Hal looks at Rip's hands and says, "I got a better question. Why is he wearing a Green Lantern ring?" A little while later, Sornik finishes the scans on Rip and says that he's probably knocked out from the trauma of traveling through a temporal anomaly. But if there was something beforehand, she wouldn't know. Hal looks at the ring on Rip's finger and reaches for it, but it shocks him, stating, "Do not attempt to remove without authorization." John then tells the ring that this is Corps Leader John Stewart. Execute safety override Tango 4 Kilo. The ring says, "Override executed," and it slips off, and John asks, "What lantern does this belong to?" The The ring says error. Question presumes an incorrect response. And John says, okay, when was its last system update? And the ring says, Earth year 2047. Before anyone can ask how, Rip jumps up on the table, shouting, Sarko! And then he lunges at John, telling him, give me back the ring! As Rip struggles with John, Hal and Kyle tell him that he might want to let go of John now. And Rip says, wait, John Stewart? Then that means that there are still Green Lanterns. Good. What year is this? Kyle tells him that it's 2017. And Hal grabs Rip, asking, what did you mean by there's no more Green Lanterns? Rip begins to explain that there's been a corruption in the timeline, and John pulls Hal back, asking Rip, where did you get this ring? Rip tells him that he gave it to him. He said that there would be a time when the hour was late, and it would prove that he's an ally. And that hour is very late. Rip then tells the ring to display the data package, and a hollow image of a man appears. That man is Sarko. That's who I came to arrest. Sarko was unhappy with the unification of the Green and Yellow Corps. Shortly after the Yellow Lanterns finished building their battery, they didn't see why they should be Yellow Lanterns. After some time, the Yellow Lanterns removed their rings and replaced them with green ones. Sarko is a zealot, trying to make sure that that doesn't happen by removing the Green Lanterns from existence by using something that he finds in this timeline. At this moment, he hasn't found it yet, but he will, and then the Green Lanterns will be gone forever. John tells Kyle to tell all of the Lanterns to charge up their rings and tells Soranik that he suggests that she do the same. As the two fly out, Kyle asks Soranik if she could ask the 30-year-old ring anything, what would it be? Soranik tells him actually she wouldn't. Knowledge of the future is dangerous. One piece of information will create change, and then that will lead to a second, and so on. And Kyle says, man, it looks like a movie night is in order. I would like to introduce you to the Terminator series, but only the first two. Soranik sighs, and Kyle says, it doesn't have to be a date. It's just that not being the White Lantern, I get to stay here now and you get to stay here. Soranik says that the future is at stake and he's asking her out. And after snipping Kyle's construct flower, she tells him, you need to focus. And then she flies ahead with Kyle telling her, well, that's not a no. Back at the command center, John and Rip discuss Sarko's arrival at Space Sector 563. And as Hal hears that, he begins to think. Salak radios in that they have a problem, an invasion force is making its way to Mogo, and John shouts for everyone to get ready. As all of the Lancers get into position, Hal leads a charge with missile constructs up in space, and as he gets up, his missiles pass through the crystal creatures. John radios in for him to report, and Hal tells him, we kinda have a huge problem here, Johnny. As Hal fights with the creatures, he examines one up close, and he says, oh god. Hal calls down to John, telling him that the attacks aren't working, they're going to need to hit them with something big from down there. And John tells him, not while you're up there. Hal shouts, we don't have time! I'm bringing them over the horizon now! Just hit me with a countdown! Everyone back on Mogo begins to put their rings to the ground, powering up Mogo. And John says that there's a few hundred rings boosting him. Be sure to use them all. The Green Lantern symbol on Mogo begins to shine, and then it releases a giant green blast into space, engulfing Hal Jordan along with it. He forms a construct rocket around himself, and he blasts back off to the planet, telling Mogo, good shooting. And Mogo responds, telling him, I am pleased to help. John looks back up at the sky and tells everyone, looks clear, and then several beams of green shoot down into the ground. As the creatures start to crawl out of the holes, John asks Rip if there's something that he isn't telling them. Hal stops him and says, actually, I think I made those months ago when I was still a renegade. I was wearing Krona's Gauntlet too long, and it changed me from the exposure. The last thing that I did with it was forge a ring of my own willpower, and then I hid the Gauntlet deep in a dead planet in Space Sector 563. Right where Goran's son and Space Ape went missing. It was where Sarko's first rip in the timeline happened, and somehow this all leads back to Krona's Gauntlet, and back to me. John tells Hal if that's the case, you know what to do. And Rip says, I'm going with you. Hal asks, what about you? And John says, I'm gonna hold the line until you can go. Now go! All of the Lanterns charge at the construct creatures, and all of the Lanterns' constructs shatter as they strike. Guy and Arkillo jump through with a giant bat and sword, and as they hit the constructs, their constructs break like the others. And Guy says, welps, I'm out of ideas. Kilowog asks, what's the plan now? And John pulls his ring off, telling everyone they don't have a choice. Everyone, give up your rings because right now they aren't worth a damn. Up over on that nameless planet, Sarko watches as Hal heads towards him, telling himself, it looks like the greatest Green Lantern of them all is coming to thwart me, along with that nuisance Rip Hunter. Goran's son says, you sent most of your pets away. All Hal needs was an opening. As Sarko brings up the container that Hal hid the gauntlet in, he says that there is something that Hal did before removing that gauntlet. And just as the Gauntlet was changing him, he changed the Gauntlet by imprinting the spark of thought into it. By doing so, it gave birth to a consciousness capable of freely using only will and lacking all other emotions. It was his father that Hal told the location of the Gauntlet to. And when Hal gets here, it will not be him he will be fighting, but rather his own creation. As the Gauntlet begins to take form, Sarko looks back at Goran's son and he asks, "What? Nothing to say? How about you, Space Ape? Or rather, Prince Lorix? Perhaps now you understand that there is a future that's going to end you all." And then a voice tells him, "The future isn't here yet." And Hal touches down, telling him, "I'm here to put things right." Sarko laughs, telling him Sinestro would laugh, knowing that the person who brought an end to him would in fact be the one to end everyone. Rip asks Hal what is he talking about, and Hal says that he's talking about Krona's Gauntlet. It was just a weapon before he buried it here, but now it's more than that, it's alive. Back on Mogo, the Lanterns all begin firing back at the constructs, but one manages to knock John to the ground. Kyle runs over to check on him, and then he takes Rip's ring, shouting to it, asking how do they stop these things? John struggles, telling him don't, and then the ring says, "Honor Guard Lantern, Kyle Rayner authorized, targets identified for termination." The ring then scans Kyle, and then Soranik, and displays a family tree. Kyle sees Sinestro's name, and then he sees Soranik Nato, the mother of Sarko, and the father is... Kyle says, "No!" And he puts back on his ring, shouting, "No!" And he flies off. Back on the nameless planet, Hal begins to fight off Krona's construct. And just as the construct strikes, Rip creates a shield protecting them. Rip shouts it won't last long. "Hurry up and dig!" Hal creates drills and begins to dig away until he pulls out the Gauntlet. With all of his strength, he rips the Gauntlet into, causing the constructs on Mogo and Krona's construct to stop moving. Green lights begin to shine out of Krona's construct and the beams shoot into Sarko. And as the construct fades, Kyle flies down and looks at Sarko. Sarko looks back laughing. "Ha ha 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 ha! You're just in time." And then he stops before finishing his sentence. Kyle looks at Sarko's lifeless body and Hal tells him, "It's all right." And Kyle stops him, telling him, "No, it's not all right. We can't leave him here." The next day, Hal takes the broken pieces of the Gauntlet and places them in the vault. And he tells it that he should never have taken it from this room, and he will make sure that it never happens again. Rip tells John that it looks like his work is finished here, so it's time for him to get going on the next mission. John hands Rip back his ring, telling him, "Don't forget this." And Rip laughs, "Ha ha ha, yeah, in the wrong hands, that information could be a powerful weapon." John tells him, "Don't give me credit. I was thinking long and hard about downloading its data before giving it back." Rip smiles and says, "I never doubted you for a minute. So long, friend." In a flash, Rip steps through the portal and disappears. Guy says, "You know, it would be nice to at least know who the winners are in the next few Super Bowls. Not like being a Lantern comes with a pension or anything." John walks off, telling him that he's had enough on his plate dealing with the here and now. Let someone else worry about the future. But as Kyle sits in his room, he holds his head as he cries. And he says the truth. "My son, Sarko, was my son." And there you have it, the beginning of the end. Why did I say that? Well, if you want to know what's going on between the Yellow and Green Lanterns, then you need to go check out Hal Jordan and the Green Lanterns right now in the comic books. But if you want to know what's happening here at Comicstorian, we'll be getting to that plot line in about a month or so. So if you want to keep up to date as to what's happening with the Green Lanterns on the old storylines, because we're about to start the original Green Lantern run leading up to Blackest Night again, or if you want to keep up to date on what's happening with DC Rebirth, then take yourself right on over to that subscribe button and subscribe and check out our epically long Green Lanterns Mythos playlist right here. And over here, you'll find something recommended by YouTube. I really don't know what they're recommending, but it'll be over there. I hope you guys enjoy, and I'll see you next time right here at Comicstorian.